While Ilum is the most famous world that comes to mind when you talk about kyber crystals, or still close to the top of the list when you talk more generally about lightsaber crystals and legends, there was another world held high in importance because of its crystal formation, Christophsis. This has some slightly different implications in both legends and canon, but it's important to both, so I'll specify when there's information which impacts each continuity differently, though in general the information applies to both pretty equally. Christophsis was technically first introduced in some online tie-in games for the 2008 animated movie, which kicked off the Clone Wars cartoon, but its story and importance has been fleshed out in other related materials as well as one of my favorite places, tabletop RPG sourcebooks. In Legends, lightsaber crystals were somewhat more diverse, and depending on the specific source, pretty much any crystal could be used as a focusing crystal for a lightsaber. In Young Jedi Knights, the characters are all making them out of things that are of kind of unique importance to them, albeit with some differing effects depending on what you use. So while Ilum was important as a massive source for them, it's not quite to the same extent as in New Canon. In New Canon, there's a lot more importance placed on kyber crystals as the required kind of crystal, and rather than being implied to be more of a focusing mechanism as in Legends, though there are some similar properties in both, it's often focused on more as a kind of power source, but this gets a bit beyond the scope of this video. In any case, as a result of this more specialized nature of the crystals, which were even used to power the Death Star, having large repositories of crystals made Ilum in particular even more important than it was in Legends, which was again still pretty important. The fact that Christophsis was also able to produce focusing crystals in both continuities played a large role in bringing it to the forefront of the Clone Wars early on, in the year 22 before the Battle of Yavin, or BBY. For the Jedi, Christophsis was usually not considered an attractive location to get a lightsaber crystal or a kyber crystal, because they preferred to use the more sacred sites like Ilum, according to the Clone Wars campaign guide from Wizards of the Coast. But the extra resource during such a massive war couldn't be ignored. For the Separatists, the Force-attuned crystals were a potential focusing point and energy source for superweapons they hoped to make, like the sister ship of the Malevolence, the Devastation. This was from the Clone Wars game Jedi Alliance. There were, of course, other reasons an Outer Rim world with such a prominent placement and high population would be important, but the crystal production really was what put it above and beyond other worlds in the area especially. The Fantasy Flight Games tabletop book, Collapse of the Republic, describes the Christophsis crystals as being somewhat unique from crystals found elsewhere, explicitly differentiating them from the kyber crystals of Ilum. The Christophsis kyber crystals were able to impart an increased kinetic force from a lightsaber. This is obviously part of making a unique game mechanic for different crystals for the purposes of the RPG, but that's actually the basis of a lot of lore elsewhere, especially if you look at stuff that came from, for example, Knights of the Old Republic. And it seems to keep in line with the power of the Devastation's primary weapon, which was said to be able to destroy even small planets sometimes. So it may have been introduced to further develop those ideas. The Separatists had set up an extra mining camp and had even tried to intercept Jedi kyber crystal shipments in order to develop the Devastation, but ultimately a Jedi strike team was able to board the ship and destroy it. The Christophsis crystals had important to the beings of Christophsis, a slight majority of whom were human, according to the Clone Wars campaign guide, beyond just their use in weapons though. Christophsis cities, like the capital of Chalcadonia, were built directly on and in some of the largest crystal spires. The Essential Atlas mentions that the planet remained independent from galactic governments after the fall of the Empire, so it seems likely they didn't exactly enjoy the constant fighting over their crystal homes for use in weapons. Who would have thought? That's going to do it for today's video though. If you've enjoyed, consider leaving a like, subscribing for more, or leaving a suggestion for a future topic in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.